Picture a Friday night, probably 1990, 1991, somewhere in there. The good VHS has been rewound. You've got a bowl of something in your lap. Maybe there are other people in the room. Maybe it's just you. The lights are off, or low at least, and the TV is doing that thing it does on those nights where it feels bigger than it actually is. And then there's a kid on screen. Not a normal movie kid, not the precocious one who says funny things, not the wide-eyed one there to make adults feel protective. This kid is doing something. He's carrying a scene. He's in close-up and he's holding, and you're watching him the way you don't usually watch a child actor, which is as an actor. You're thinking, even if you're 9 and you don't have words for it, this kid is for real. You've seen that face at least 3 or 4 different times in your life, in completely different contexts. Horror movie, comedy, sitcom, prestige drama. He was all over the place for about a decade. And then, at some point, he just wasn't. Not in a headline way, not in a tabloid way. He was there, and then, very gradually, he wasn't on your screen anymore. And you probably filed it under grew up, I guess, and moved on. His name is Miko Hughes. And the reason we're talking about him today is not because of what happened to him, it's because of what he chose to do instead. Because it turns out Miko Hughes did something that almost no one in his situation does cleanly. He walked out of the spotlight, not in a crisis, not in a blaze, and not backward. He walked out forward into a real job in an industry he already knew, and has been showing up to work ever since. Most of us have that one thing we were known for as kids, the sport, the instrument, the way teachers said, "You're really going places." And then, somewhere between part-time jobs and rent, it just falls out of the story. You don't quit in a blaze of glory. One day you just notice nobody asks you about it anymore, and you're not sure if you miss it or if you're relieved. For Miko Hughes, that version of himself is frozen on VHS. The creepy kid in Pet Sematary, the blunt kid in Kindergarten Cop, the sitcom kid on Full House, still doing the thing perfectly while the adult version of him is on a soundstage in work boots, pushing a camera case. And there's a moment in that gap between who the world remembers and who he has to be at 6 a.m. Call time. That feels very familiar if you've ever let an old identity go quiet without a big speech. That's the story. Let's go back to where this started. Miko Hughes had his first on-screen credit before he could tie his own shoes. His first professional job was a public service announcement at 22 months old. Not 22 years, 22 months. His first feature film came at 27 months. The kid was working before most of us had a full vocabulary. And the thing is, from the very beginning, he wasn't just cute filler. He had something specific. You could see it. Pet Sematary comes out in 1989, and he's 3 years old, playing Gage Creed. If you saw it, you remember it. If you saw it at the wrong age, you really remember it. You know, this is a Stephen King adaptation about grief and resurrection and the specific horror of losing a child. And the filmmakers needed a kid who could do something almost impossibly difficult. Be completely innocent, and then, in the film's back half, be genuinely unsettling. Not in a he's wearing a costume way, in a something wrong is happening inside this small person way. And he did it. There's a close-up in that movie, you know the one if you've seen it, where Gage is looking at his father after he's come back wrong, and there's nothing behind his eyes that should be there. And it's not makeup. That's just Miko Hughes, 3 years old, giving the camera something most adult actors struggle to deliver. That movie scared people, not just because of what was in the script, because of him. Then the very next year, 1990, there he is again, this time in Kindergarten Cop with Arnold Schwarzenegger, playing the kid who delivers what might honestly be the most quoted line in a film full of quotable lines. Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. The whole theater laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. The kind where you're not ready for it and it just catches you. Because the kid delivered it with absolute certainty, zero irony, completely deadpan, in a room full of nervous adults, and it was perfect. Same year, 2 completely opposite registers, and he nailed both of them. That alone would be a career. But Miko Hughes wasn't close to done. From 1990 to 1995, he was the recurring kid, Aaron, on Full House. So now he wasn't just in your VHS horror rotation or your Saturday afternoon movie. He was in your living room every week. Kids who were too young for Pet Sematary knew his face from Full House. Adults who loved Kindergarten Cop saw him again on Tuesday night television. His face was everywhere, without ever feeling like it was being pushed everywhere. He just kept showing up in things that people were already watching. 1994, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. He's Dylan, the kid around whom the entire premise pivots. The movie is Wes Craven playing with the architecture of his own franchise, and at the center of it is this child actor who has to convince you that something is genuinely wrong in his world. And he does. Miko was 8 years old, back in the horror space, back doing the work. 1995, Apollo 13. He's playing Jim Lovell's son, Jeffrey, watching his father's spacecraft disappear. Wow, the scene where the family is watching the news coverage. There's a moment where the camera finds his face, and he doesn't need to do anything big. He just has to be a kid who is terrified for his dad. And it's real. And then, 1998, Mercury Rising. This one is different, and if you saw it, you probably remember it differently than the others. Miko plays Simon Lynch, a 9-year-old autistic boy who accidentally cracks a top-secret government code and ends up hunted for it. Bruce Willis plays the federal agent protecting him. The film required Miko to carry long scenes, many of them without dialogue, showing a child navigating a world that moves at the wrong speed for him, clinging to patterns while everything around him disintegrates. He was 12. He did it. The film wasn't a massive critical success, but people remember his performance. It's the one fans bring up at conventions now, the one where they say, "I didn't expect that from a kids' movie." Because it wasn't a kid's movie, and he didn't play it like one. For roughly a decade, Miko Hughes was everywhere, in everything, and he never looked like he was just filling a slot. He was a working actor, a good one. Here's the thing about being a child actor that is almost never talked about honestly. There is no natural next step. Not really. The industry has a place for cute kids. It has a place, sometimes, for scary kids. It has a very clear lane for the blonde sitcom kid who grows up into a teen idol and then, ideally, into a leading man. But it does not have a reliable pipeline for the kid who is exceptionally good at playing specific emotional weight in genre films. Vic, who is now a teenager. That's not a failure. That's not a scandal. That's just the shape of the thing. By the late 90s and into the early 2000s, the roles had started to space out. Not because Miko Hughes stopped being good, nothing in the record suggests that, but because the very specific thing he was great at was the thing the industry only needs done by a very small child. You can only play Gage Creed when you're 3. You can only be the wide-eyed kid in the arms of a panicked Bruce Willis when you're 9. Those windows close. He kept working. Boston Public in 2001, playing Peter Feldman, a role with real teeth in a prestige TV drama that people were actually watching. Clockstoppers in 2002. Small parts, but credited parts, real work. And in 2008, a cameo in Tropic Thunder, which, if you remember the film, this is not a movie that fills its crowd scenes with amateurs. That's something. But the arc was changing. You could see it in the credits. And here, right here, is where the lazy version of this story goes sideways, so let's make sure we don't tell the lazy version. The lazy version says, child star fades, can't make the transition, ends up in the where are they now pile. Cautionary tale. We've all heard that story. It's usually dressed up with just enough implication, a rough period, a difficult adjustment, some unnamed struggle, to make the audience feel like there's something dark they're not quite being told. There's nothing dark here. What happened to Miko Hughes is quieter and honestly more interesting than that. He pivoted, deliberately apparently, and without a lot of fuss about it. At some point, and there's no single press release that marks the day, which is exactly how most real career decisions work, Miko Hughes stopped being primarily a camera subject and started becoming someone who shows up on the other side of the camera. His credits in the 2000s and into the 2020s start listing him not as an actor, but in the camera department, the electrical department, cinematographer on smaller projects. He's on Sweet Caroline, Killer Therapy, Ryan Carson, Finding Faith, genre and indie projects, the kinds of shoots where everyone is there because they actually want to make the thing, not because a studio told them to be there. He knows how sets work. He's been on them since he was a toddler. He knows where the camera goes, why the light is placed where it is, what a DP actually does in the hour before a setup. But he spent a decade being told where to stand so his face would look right on film. And at some point, it seems, he decided that knowing that was a credential, not just a memory. He describes himself online as Cali-based camera team, and then, separately, as the original Gage. Both things, at the same time, without apparent contradiction. I want to sit with that for a second because I think it's the thing about Miko Hughes that most whatever happened to coverage gets wrong. Most of those pieces treat these two identities as evidence of a gap, the person he was versus the person he became, the before and after of a faded career. But that's not what it looks like when you read it straight. It looks like a man who knows exactly who he is. He shows up at horror conventions, OKC HorrorCon in 2024, the sinister creature. Con in June of 2025, for the love of horror in Manchester, England, Memphis Monster Con, and he talks about those early films with genuine warmth and very good humor. He's not performing nostalgia for a check. He's not defensive. He answers questions about Pet Sematary with the specific, generative detail of someone who actually remembers what those sets smelled like, what Mary Lambert was like to work with, what it was like to be 3 years old and not entirely sure what you were doing, but knowing you were supposed to hold it right there in front of the light and do the thing. Fans love him for it, and they should. But at the same time, the next morning, he's back on a set somewhere in California in the camera department, making sure the equipment is where it needs to be so that the person in front of the lens can have their moment. That's the job. That's the full job. And here's what nobody mentions when they tell the child star grew up story. The camera department is not a fallback. It's not plan B. It is a demanding technical and physical job that requires years to get good at, and the people who hire you for it really hire you, not as a favor. Don't care who you were when you were 3. They care whether you can do the work on a tight schedule in bad lighting with everyone stressed out and a director asking for something different than what was planned. Miko Hughes has been getting hired. That means something. Right now, in 2026, Miko Hughes is a working camera professional based in California. He's on the convention circuit, probably has a show coming up given how active he's been the last couple of years. He signs autographs as Gage Creed and talks about what it was like on the set of Pet Sematary with the ease of someone who has told the story many times and still means it every time. He's good at conventions. You can see it in the panel footage. He's relaxed, he's funny, he doesn't hedge. He knows the audience loves him, and he loves them back without it being complicated. And then he goes home and goes back to work. His IMDb shows him in the camera and electrical departments across a string of projects, not blockbusters, not prestige studio fare, but real films made by real crews that required his specific skills and his full attention. That's not a footnote, that's a career. A second one, and built on the foundation of the first one and extending in a completely different direction. There's a very adult kind of peace that comes when you stop needing your work to make you visible, and you just want it to feel honest and solid and yours. A lot of people hit that in their 40s. They're not chasing titles anymore. They're chasing the feeling of being good at the thing that actually pays the bills and lets them sleep at night. That's where Miko Hughes seems to have landed. Still on sets, still surrounded by lenses and cables and rolling and cut. But now his name is on the crew list instead of the poster, and the people who know how hard that job is are the ones who nod when they see him working. The kid whose face once sold tickets ends up being the guy who makes sure the cameras are exactly where they need to be, so somebody else can have their moment in the light. And here's what I keep thinking about with this story. There are a lot of ways to define a wasted life in Hollywood. the ones that end badly, the ones where the people who should have been protected weren't, the ones where the money went somewhere it shouldn't have gone and the person on the poster was the last to know. Miko Hughes is not any of those stories, but there's a less dramatic version of waste that doesn't get talked about as much. The version where someone spends 20 years trying to claw back something that was never going to return at full size. Was burning through their real adult years, chasing the outline of a thing they were briefly famous for, and never managing to be just a person, never managing to build the quieter, realer version of a working life. He didn't do that either. He looked at what he had, the knowledge, the eye, the years of watching how films are actually made from the inside, and he turned it into a skill set instead of a ghost story. He walks into a horror convention and he's genuinely happy to be there. He walks onto a set the next morning and he's genuinely there for that too. I don't think that's simple. I actually think it's one of the harder things a person can do, to hold two versions of yourself without letting either one undermine the other. To let the kid in the VHS cover be exactly who he was, fully, completely, talk without apology, and to also be someone else entirely by 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Most of us can't do that with our own histories. We either cling to the old thing past the point of usefulness, or we run from it so hard we lose everything good that was in it. Miko Hughes, from everything the record shows, just kept both. The question I'd leave you with, and you can take it wherever it fits in your own life, is this. What's the thing you're still performing for an audience that stopped watching years ago? And what would it look like to keep it quietly in one hand and reach for the actual work with the other? He found a way. He's still at it.